Welcome to West of Tulsa. I'm CJ Ward. We're broadcasting from Ventura, California, and most of the crew's here. We got Dan at the controls, got Gabe here.
Yep.
Helm's back.
How you
Welcome
doing,
back
guys?
there, Helm.
Thank you, guys.
Beth isn't here because she's the only one who really has a job that makes any money. So she's still not. She's going to join us here at one point.
One day.
One day. Yeah, she's working hard, and we appreciate it. She's actually the one paying all the bills.
Someone's got to pay the bills.
Somebody's got to pay the bills. All right, let's take care of some housekeeping. We don't forget our tip line, right?
Yep.
Gabe's happy because I mentioned this off the top. We have our tip line. So go to our website, westoftulsa.com, click on the tip line page, fill it out. If you have a story idea, something that we should be talking about, a great topic idea, if you want to join us here in studio, we'd love to have you. Even if you're east of Tulsa, we'd love to have you come join us.
Hey, the man's father and son, they were east of Tulsa.
They were
way east.
Yeah, way east. New Hampshire. Yeah, that was about
Way
as far
out
as you
there.
could get.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, see, we'll have you in studio. All right. Our guest today, we are honored to have Tony Baker join us in studio. Welcome.
Thanks, CJ. I appreciate that. It's good to be here.
So West of Tulsa, we're all about car stories, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is what we are here for. And this man does it and has been doing it for years and years and years. In fact, Beth gave me a birthday present many years ago. It was Hot Rodding in Santa Barbara County, and Tony wrote it. And you've written, what, maybe 6 or 7 of these?
This
7?
is my new book, number 7, Hot Rodding in the San Fernando Valley. And it's out now. Excuse me, I got a frog in the voice here. Anyway, available from arcadiapublishing.com, or you can order it locally from Auto Books, Arrow Books in Burbank.
Yeah, and they're great books. I mean, it's my kind of book. It has tons of photos and nice captions to explain what it is you're looking at. And you know, if you're into racing, you can recognize a lot of these names.
Well, speaking of books, I mean, that's how Helm got introduced to Tony is through
Oh yeah,
bookstore, right?
Exactly. Tina, owner of Auto Air Books in Burbank, happened to mention her the podcast, and I let her know that the studio's located in Ventura, California. First name that popped up and said you need to reach out to him was Tony Baker, and literally that same day afternoon, I get a message from Gabe like somebody message us. His name's Tony Baker, and from that point on, we kind of went to go support him at the book signing, and now we have him in studio for.
And the funny part about all that is, I was like, Tony Baker, that name sounds familiar. I was like, where have I seen that name before? Or heard that name?
Yeah.
And then you said that, he wrote the Hot Rodding in Ventura and Santa Barbara County. And then I go to my bookshelf and realize that I got the book, and I didn't realize that you are the author. I'm like, I was like, we got to get him on the show,
Exactly,
because all my buddies that have hot rods have that book on their shelf or in their garage. So.
See?
Put a man to the
Exactly.
face to the author of the book. So there you go.
That's got to feel good that everybody's got your book, because I knew exactly where to go to get my book because I've looked at it so many times.
No, it's great. Arcadia is a good publisher, and they get the book out there. That's the main thing. Is it's top-notch distribution. You can get them in. I've seen them for sale at Rite Aid, and Barnes & Noble is the only remaining chain bookstore left. You can get them there, and hardware stores carry them.
That's where I found your book. I found your book at my local hardware store. B&B Hardware had it on the counter. Yeah, they had it on the counter. Yeah,
That's cool.
yeah.
That's a great impulse item.
Yeah.
10 years, and none of them got out of print yet.
Wow. So you've been doing this 10 years. You put out 7 books in 10 years.
First book was 20, actually longer than that now, 2012. Hot Rodding in Ventura County came out.
So what were you doing before that? I know you were kind of in tech. What were you doing before you got into writing books about hot rodding?
Well, a number of things usually connected with publishing or broadcasting, that kind of stuff. But more back end in writing, a lot of editing. That's how I learned how to put a book together.
So what made you decide to do this? I mean, was there something that happened? Somebody you met? What was it inspired you to do this?
I was actually I'd done some stuff for Ventura Museum for their quarterly edition. And through that, I met other historians that were working on books for this publisher. And I functioned as a consultant for them. And they said, well, why don't you do a book? And I tried to think of a subject and really, one that wasn't burned out, and happened to be at a car show because I'm a hot rod guy. And local photographer guy who goes by the name of Waldo, who's kind of a famous hot rod guy locally, said, do hot rods. there's great history here. Duh. And, I already knew some of the old timers on the scene, and one thing led to another. And through that, over 10 years, I think I've met virtually everyone involved in motorsports in the 20th century along the Central Coast.
Wow.
Now going into Los Angeles.
So your first book was Hot Rodding in Ventura County?
Right.
Was that the first one?
Right.
Okay, and then it just kind of spread, Santa Barbara
And
County.
then Santa Barbara, and then I did a general motorsports history book for both counties, and then one on road racing, which I really enjoyed doing again, in Southern California. And did a motorcycling book with a guy up in Santa Barbara. And now we moved down to the San Fernando Valley, and we're doing down there. And next one, I believe, will probably be either Hollywood or the Hollywood Pasadena scene.
Because then that's where you grew up, right?
Yeah. That's how I got a lot of my connections for the new book.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I really enjoy sitting down and just looking at the photos and seeing the old photos and seeing who they are, the names. It's just such an interesting history, and I love how you put it together.
Well, I try to, besides the cars, I try to give a picture of the scene in those days, whether it's a drive-in or, a street that everybody used to cruise or that type of thing. And I try to also tell it in a chronological order, tell a story from beginning to end.
Yeah. Well, I know some of the hot rodding guys in Santa Barbara, and I knew them before I saw your book. And then I look back and I see these photos of these young guys standing next to the car, and they're all greased up, and I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
It's fun to see it that way when you see what these guys were, what they were wrenching on back in the late 40s after the war. Pretty exciting stuff.
It was a great period, especially right in the middle 1950s out here on the coast. Guys were, cars were still big. There was this huge interest, and you had a lot of mechanics back from the Second World War that were still young men and into fast cars. So they took all the skills that they learned, and built these incredible fast cars. And nowadays, you think of it, 100 horsepower is nothing. But in those days, to get 100 horsepower out of a flathead V8 engine was, that was an achievement. And to get 100 miles an hour out of it was an even bigger one, and not kill yourself in the process.
Yeah. Well, they figured out, you get 100 miles an hour, but then strip it down, take some weight off, get a little aerodynamics, and then you could move on those things.
Yeah. And a lot of, I don't want to say national motorsports, but in the case of drag racing, that actually did get its start here. And in Santa Barbara, and then most of the action moved down to L.A. by the middle 50s. But the first drag strip, first legal drag strip in the country was in Santa Barbara Airport in 1948.
Yeah.
And that's the Santa Barbara Accelerators.
Yeah. I love the name.
Yeah.
Santa Barbara Accelerators.
It is a cool name.
Well, it was Santa Barbara Acceleration Association.
Yeah. But if you remember, you were an accelerator as well.
Very accurate.
Yeah. There's still evidence out there. You go past the airport, you can still see where I know they have a couple almost Quonset huts or whatever, the big hangars that are out there.
The whole north end of the hangar, the whole north end of the airport is virtually the same way it was.
Yeah.
Especially south of Firestone Street or Firestone Boulevard, whatever the road is that runs along there. But the starting line to Santa Barbara drag strip, it's all exactly where it was. And then there was a rectangular sort of a small warehouse building that they built a figure-8 track around. That's still there. The actual drag strip is still there, but it's all overgrown. There's a gate in front of it now. But all that's still there. And also the original course for when they were doing the Santa Barbara road races in the 50s, that's all still there. The hangars are still there. And I'm actually involved in a project restoring the two oldest hangars on Santa Barbara Airport, and where the old passenger terminal was on the northeast corner of the airport.
No, one of the hangars, I saw photos of it. You could still see almost the stands, the outline of where the stands were next to it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty amazing when you go back and see that, and then you see the old photos.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I love a couple of restaurants where you'll see James Dean with his Porsche 356, one of the cars that he raced there before the Spider, and He was out there quite a bit, if I understand.
Oh, James
right.
Dean, yeah.
Yeah, he was out there.
The 54 and 55 races. Or,
Yeah.
No, the 54 races, he was dead by the time they did the 55. But, yeah, he raced there. The Santa Barbara road races, they got crowds of like 30 and 40,000 people.
Whoa.
Really?
And back then, that must have been almost the population of the area.
Well, people came up from Los Angeles. They got a huge crowd from L.A. And, millionaires and movie stars and stuff. It was a great scene.
Wow.
Incredible scene, yeah.
That's crazy.
Exciting stuff.
And I know we're gonna see a bunch of the pictures that you've collected through all your books and stuff. How hard was it to get these photos and archive this stuff and get this information so you can put it in this book?
It's easier than you might think, but you have to know the people. It's a lot of guys normally didn't have cameras. Most of them didn't take pictures, but the ones that did usually took a lot of pictures. And most of these pictures were sitting in shoe boxes and, on the closet shelf for years. And, they're anxious to share their history. Kids aren't interested in them. Or, their kids aren't interested in them. So I usually get the pictures. And now I've got a network of people that I've been doing this for so long. When someone has a photograph collection,
You get it.
But it was easier for you because you already had the network of these people, so you can ask them.
It was surprisingly easy to start, though.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it really. I mean, I remember the first canvas I did for collecting pictures on the first book. I think within a couple months, I had over 600 images.
Wow, that's a lot.
And it seems like these guys are pretty willing to share these pictures.
Oh yeah, yeah. I get their expressed approval and everything for publication, but yeah, everybody wants their history told.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to be forgotten.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and that's an important part of this because, I've had a lot of discussions with guys in the Santa Barbara racing community, and one of the topics that always comes up is we're losing a lot of these guys.
Mm-hmm.
If we would have done this a year ago, 3 of them would have been here. And so that's why this is so important, just documenting their stories, their history, before it's just gone.
Yeah, well, that's one of the big purposes for me to do it. Also, being a historian, there's this adage that when the last guy dies who knows the story, it's gone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
History's forgotten.
When you start talking to somebody about all the stories you've written about and the photos, and is there one, if somebody says, what's one that kind of instantly comes to mind? Is there one story out of all these stories that you just kind of seem to go to? Like just great story.
Well, yeah, one anecdote about a couple of local hot rodder, Lee Ledbetter, and this other guy who just went by the name The Shadow.
The Shadow.
Right. Well, he was an L.A. hot rodder, but they were over at the Kimball Ranch over by Satakoy, which was the family there had all kinds of buildings on the ranch, and the kids were into hot rods, so everybody hung out there. But one Sunday they're working on a car, and they'd driven it over from Ojai to Satakoy. And car wasn't finished, but it drove, and they had to get it back. And they'd already been working, it was getting dark. So they didn't want to take the car around Telegraph Road to get back to Ventura because it was completely illegal. And it didn't have headlights. So they took it over the hill, over to Ojai via, the summit there, with one guy driving, the other guy standing on the passenger seat with a flashlight.
Oh my gosh!
Wait, so they literally
made it.
They literally went over the summit. They didn't go use any roads. They went literally like kind of off-roading, like a fire road, or
Sulphur Mountain Road in those days was a regular road.
It
was a paved road that you could take, and it dropped you off by Foster Park.
Still,
wow.
Yeah. That's a great
awesome.
story.
Yeah, pitch dark, standing on the passenger seat with a flashlight.
Wow.
Now you know how he got the name Shadow, right?
Yeah.
Wow, that's a great story.
So you've covered Ventura County, Santa Barbara County, LA County. Have you covered Orange County at all?
No, I haven't gotten down there yet. I did a little bit the San Diego area.
Okay. So because this is the first thing I thought of when I heard that you covered most of Southern California, is which county, in your opinion, was the fastest?
Oh man, he's putting you on the spot.
Because everybody's going to argue their point here.
It's going to be controversial.
Everybody, every region claims that, but I would have to say that Santa Barbara County had the fastest drivers, had the first drag strip, had more members of the 200-mile-an-hour club than any other area. Especially, they all seem to live in Gaviota. Goleta.
Goleta.
Yeah, they all seem to live in Goleta, but there are more members of the 200-mile-an-hour club
Santa Barbara.
From Bonneville,
Really?
living in Santa Barbara.
I know that's a prestigious club to be in.
Yeah.
Well, maybe back then they were just wide open and it was just, groves and wide open roads and they could get out there. And
that's the other difference. I mean, both counties, particularly Ventura, was miles and miles of straight roads.
Yeah.
With no intersections. And gas was, a quarter a gallon.
Jeez.
Right. And so, and also, the internal combustion engine was still kind of a big thing. It was really only 50 or half a century old in those days. I mean, it was started in the late 19th century. I think the first successful ones were, but really it was a hip technology. It was a sexy technology, and so all the kids, same thing with aviation in the same period.
Yeah.
It was cars and airplanes. And that's kind of worn off now. Now digital, electronics and stuff is the big thing, but it's still around. I mean, it's still a popular culture. You go to any Cars and Coffee, you'll see that.
Everybody loves a loud engine and rumble.
Oh, yeah.
I don't care what generation you're from. I mean, if you like EVs, great, but you're not a hot rodder at that point.
Yeah.
I mean, some might argue that, but I don't believe that. But
you got to have a little bit of rumble.
But everybody wants to hear a rumble, whether it has 100 horsepower or 1,000 horsepower. Everybody likes to hear a little rumble, a little.
Well, certain hours of the day.
Yeah.
It's so true.
Well, to add to Gabe's question about which county was the fastest, my next question would be which county was the most influential one to kind of progress the innovation of drag racing and the whole hot rodding scene.
Well, that would be Los Angeles County, the San Fernando Valley particularly. And that's what my new book really talks about, is this one club, the Road Kings, were there when drag racing went from basically a teenage outlaw pastime to a national sport.
Wow.
And 1963 was kind of a seminal year with the first Winter Nationals, which was when the first NHRA Nationals was televised on a national level. And it was a huge event. Mm-hmm. And the Road Kings, I think, had, there was 8 eliminator spots, and they had 6 of them.
Wow. And Don Prudhomme was a Road King.
Yeah, he's in the book here.
Yeah.
And
the snake,
Was he part of that original group?
Well, with the Road Kings started like a lot of clubs in the very early 50s. I think it was 1952. And for the first couple of years, they really, didn't do much then. But they were still focused on racing rather than cruising and partying. I mean, there were 2 kinds of clubs. There were the cruising partying clubs, and then were the clubs that were serious race guys. And the Road Kings quickly got a reputation for being racing guys. And around the same period, San Fernando Drag Strip was founded in, I think, 1953. So by the middle 1950s, the Road Kings were racing a lot at San Fernando. There were other clubs racing there as well. I mean, the Valley had probably 24 car clubs in the early mid-1950s by that time. But the Road Kings quickly came to dominate. They were the best mechanics, the best drivers. There's one guy in particular, Jim Miles, one of the founders, was very successful. Another named Butch Cedarquist from 1953, who was a very successful driver. And then you had a fellow, Tom Jant, by the middle 1950s, and he was the fastest guy in the Valley, just like the character in American Graffiti. Nobody could beat Tom Jant. He even had a yellow Deuce Coupe, like the guy in the movie. But along 1956, 57, first Tommy Ivo joined TV Tommy. And then they brought in Don Prudhomme, who came over from another club. And between the two of those, that's when the Road Kings, by 1956, they were unbeatable.
They were the guys.
Wow.
They continued to dominate right up until 1963. And they had other drivers. It wasn't just that core of drivers. It seemed that there was, over 5 years, they had something like 9 championship drivers to come,
Man, that's cool.
The famous, Floyd Lippincott Jr., actual name was Bob Moravez.
Yeah. And we
With a
love
freight
that
train.
story.
Yeah.
That's such a great story.
Yeah, his family didn't want him to race, so he raced under an assumed name, and a couple of
That is
DJs
so
came
cool.
up with the name.
It's an interesting name.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure they picked something that had a little flavor to it.
That
make it
definitely has a lot of flavor.
interesting. Yeah.
What's his name? What was the name?
Floyd Lippincott.
Floyd
Lippincott.
and Junior.
Well,
They threw a Junior on
yeah,
there.
Yeah, Junior. Again, that's the kind of a 1960s thing, though, or an early 60s things. Like you had Alfred E. Newman with Mad Magazine. So they would give these kind of dorky names to comedic characters. That's what they did in Bob's case. I thought it would be funny. So
Lippincott.
Lippincott.
Could you just sit in that meeting?
Floyd Lippincott.
Yeah, Floyd
Floyd.
Lippincott. Yeah. Sitting around drinking some beer. Okay, what are we going to come up with? What kind of name are we
You
going
don't
to
see
come
a
up
lot
with?
of Floyds anymore.
No.
This
They need
was
to bring back Floyds.
this was the
Well, I
era
think
of
what
Animal
happened-
House, like Animal House, like Otter and the name, like nicknames and
yeah.
stuff. Those were really big, like back
those
then.
are
like
cool.
when I was born, and CJ and I were born, like that era, early '60s.
That is
Nicknames were cool.
Yeah, well, they say Don the Snake. That's what they called him. There were other drivers that went by nicknames in those days, but it was a great time to race, and it all kind of came to a head in 1963.
Yeah. Great history. Do we want to pop up some of the photos?
Sure. Yeah.
Well, let's start off with some of the, and we apologize for anybody listening to this on a podcast, but you can see what we're about to pop up, some of these old photos.
We're going to
on our
be
YouTube
very
channel.
descriptive about the photos.
We'll do our
we're going to
best,
say this is what we're seeing
We'll
here,
do our
right?
best,
let's,
right.
let's appreciate our listeners.
Sure. And these were all these photos you brought today before the interview. So yeah, we'll just let you just talk about these.
Yeah.
Okay, well, this is a very influential car in both California racing history and particularly Ventura County. This belonged to a club called the Motor Monarchs, founded in 1948. Very early club, very successful. They were the fastest guys in the region at one time. This is the number 440 Roadster. That's the only name it ever went by. It was bright chartreuse green in color. But this
It's a
is
Ford, right? It's a Ford.
Yeah, it's a Ford 1929, I think, Model T or Model A Ford Roadster. But what makes this unique is that this car was built as a dragster, which was one of the first probably 4 or 5 cars that, a couple of guys got together and said, we're going to build a car strictly for racing the quarter mile.
Go straight.
And this was built in Los Angeles during the Second World War over a period of years, and was bought by 2 brothers up here in Ventura, Eddie and Richard Martinez. And they began racing it, and you can see from the trophies on the hood from 1948 to about 1953, this was the fastest car on the Central Coast.
Wow.
Do you know, are many of these cars still around? I mean, somebody got them.
Most of them have
stashed?
disappeared.
Have they really?
This car raced for a number of years, was superseded by other club cars, but was sold to the smokers of Bakersfield, who run Famoso drag strip.
Oh.
They still to this day run Famoso.
Wow.
But they painted it purple, and they raced it for a number of years, and then it just sort of disappeared.
And we wonder if they're just like stuffed someplace. And
Well, every now and then they turn up.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
it is.
There's actually a car shown that we're going to get to here that that exact story happened. It disappeared and then turned up a couple of miles away, covered in dust. And,
Yeah, makes sense.
All right.
You go to the next one, Dan? Yeah, let's see. There we go.
Okay, this is the 440 at Santa Maria drag strip, another early California drag strip founded in 1953 by Jerry Gaskell of the Santa Maria Dragons Car Club. And with all the drag strips, there was a club associated with it. Always. This, again, like all the other drag strips, was an old airfield. And in the background, you can see that building, which was the clubhouse. That was actually the pilot's ready room.
Wow.
And Santa Maria was a B-24 training base.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So anyway, here's a starting line. at Santa Maria. Now, this is a kind of a famous race back in the time. Again, we're talking, this is about 1952. And there's the 440 on the right. And on the left was a car belonging to a guy named Ron Williams of Ventura, which had just broken the world record for roadsters at Bonneville that year.
What kind of speed?
No, I think it was like 175.
Wait, did he break that record with that
In
car?
that car.
Did
In
he
that
break that
car.
record with this car in this picture, or was it a different car?
No, in this car, in this picture, and this was a grudge match.
Wow.
So-
Wow, that's-
Dave Marquez and Ron Williams.
So it's 175 miles an hour in one of those.
In a
Yeah, I
tin
know.
can.
Now, that
You-
takes some
you
massive
felt it.
balls to do
Yeah.
that. you know?
Yeah.
Tony,
he felt it, boy.
tell us about, there's no windshield on these cars.
That's
and I
right.
see drivers wearing helmets and probably like World War II kind of goggles, like airplane goggles or
And
something,
A
right?
lot of the times they just wore the canvas pilot's helmets,
Wow.
or they wore mountain climbing helmets, which was just an aluminum shell over some like foam plastic. But those were actually more dangerous than
Sure.
a regular crash helmet. But yeah, a lot of these guys, they're just wearing the canvas.
Wow.
So, Tony, do you think men were more manly back then?
Be careful.
Oh yeah, if you didn't mind dying of like lung cancer and
Yeah.
cirrhosis of the liver,
True.
and
True. Yeah.
lead poisoning from the gasoline.
Yeah.
I think there's an argument to be made between being manly and stupid.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
I've been plenty stupid. I wouldn't call it manly.
True,
So,
true.
You know,
You know,
very
I-
fine line.
It's a
Very-
fine line. I agree.
A lot of these guys died in their 50s and 60s.
I love this photo.
Now this is Eddie Martinez on the right, and again he was founder of the Motor Monarchs. He went on to work for a number of racing teams, especially out of Bonneville. And thing about the Motor Monarchs, in 1955, 56, and 57, they were the national champions in drag racing. The first meet at Oakland, and then the two meets in 56 and 57 in Kansas. The Motor Monarchs were top eliminators.
Wow.
So, Tony, would you say the way his hair is there, would that have been referred to as a DA?
No, that's not quite a DA.
not quite a DA.
No,
What's
no.
a DA?
Duck ass.
Duck ass.
Duck ass?
Yeah, when it's like this and
It's-
curves up on the
Curves
back.
up in the back.
That was called a duck ass, a DA. Yeah.
Wow, you learn something new every day.
I know,
Did you know that?
No,
Hal?
I did not
No,
know.
it's you look like you have a duck sitting on your head.
Exactly. That's
it
my
is it
dad. I only know because that's my dad's era. My dad was a drag racer in the valley.
Oh, nice.
He might be in one of your books. I don't know.
It
But-
could be.
Yeah.
Was he from a club?
I don't think so.
so-
I think he just did it sort of casually, like out of high school.
Oh, nice.
Dan, the
'Cause-
non-car guy with
Yeah,
the
but-
drag
look,
racing dad.
but
That was
look,
my dad.
When Dan
Or me.
asked the DA for Gabe and I, isn't that an Acura? Isn't it an Acura?
Is there an Acura called the DA?
Isn't it?
I don't know.
No, that's
I
a
don't think so.
that's a Integra chassis.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
See?
Ho would be proud of you.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is Eddie on the left and his brother Richard on the right, and incredible engine mechanics. Now, this place where they're sitting here, this is a building that used to be in what they call Tortilla Flats in Ventura. That's gone now. It's under the 101. But their dad owned a small tortilla bakery, and to keep his two sons out of trouble, he built a corrugated metal shack in the backyard for them and their friends to work on their cars.
Smart
That's
dad.
cool.
This is it.
That's pretty cool, Dad.
And
huh?
you can't really see it in this picture, but on the wall back there, they got beer bottles stacked. And what they also have lots of that you can't really see are dozens of the old crown gears from the transmissions of Model A's, because those are the first thing you blew out.
Yeah.
Ah.
Shoot them up.
Yeah, replaced them with a LaSalle transmission. But that's Richard's Cadillac engine that he's working on there in the foreground, and then Eddie's got a flathead.
Such a cool
But,
picture.
Yeah.
Another Santa Maria shot. I don't know who that is, but looks like a Deuce 1932 Roadster.
But that shot right there gives you a sense of how many people showed up.
Oh,
Look,
yeah,
a pretty good
100
crowd right there.
hundreds and
Good
hundreds.
crowd.
Yeah.
Now, if you go up there today, it's still pretty much the way it is. The drag strip is a county road. The pit area now has got a bunch of county buildings on it, but you can see where the tower used to be. The foundation of the timing tower is still there, and the foundation of the clubhouse. But I actually drove down that strip with Jerry Gaskill, the founder.
Did you lay some
that's
rubber down?
fine.
Yeah, Derry actually did.
Yeah.
Nice.
You know what's funny about this picture is that if you look at any the modern day drag races like this, where it's just kind of like more grassroots, they call it no prep because there's no prep on the track or whatever, and they do it on usually a city street. Sometimes they're doing it on airfields, but you replace that car with a modern day car, a hot rod, and the people are standing there just like that. So the scene is actually the same. Now the premise is a little bit different because they're probably doing this a little bit more illegally. There's not as it's not sanctioned like this.
Yeah.
But it's kind of interesting to see that because if you go to a no prep race, it looks just like that.
Well, see, that identical thing was happening in the late 1940s with kids, and that's why drag strips got their start. Many of the drag strips were done in conjunction with like the local Lions Club or other organization, and the local sheriffs is a place where kids could go to race, and they had literally dozens of abandoned airstrips dotted all across Southern California and Ventura and Santa Barbara counties that weren't doing anything.
Yeah.
And were very easy to get a hold of. And they had miles and miles of straight, runways and taxiways. And that's what this is. This is an old B-24 taxiway that they're racing.
That's awesome.
Can you guys imagine society going, we need to keep the youth out of trouble, get them onto a drag track, let them wrench on their cars. Like, can you imagine? That's inconceivable today.
Not in California.
Right.
And
It's funny where it started.
Yeah.
I know.
These were all mostly fraternal organizations like the Elks Clubs or the Lions, that kind of thing. Now, this is another location that's big in California racing history. It was El Mirage Dry Lake. And this photograph here is taken from the first post-war meet. You can see a lot of the guys wearing Army surplus jackets and pea coats and whatnot. But that car is interesting. That was kind of a famous car. They attempted some aerodynamics underneath it. You look at how crude it is. It was probably assembled during the war and then brought out afterwards. But this was, if you hit 150 miles an hour in this thing, you knew it. Going
I bet.
What year do you think this is, Tony?
This is 1947.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's just right after the war wraps.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And here's another good. This is looks like a Model T Roadster body with a midget racer front end on it. And this is typical of the type of lake racers that they had in the day. You notice the straight pipes coming straight out of the engine going across there, and the steering wheel's been centered so the driver is sitting right in the middle. Yeah.
I mean, you can almost hear pop, 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 pop. You can almost hear the pop in those in that setup right there. Now this is this is like a deuce, right?
Yes, it's at least it's got a 32. It's got a 32 radiator shell on it. Now the back end looks like it's a Model A or Model T. Actually, that looks like a Model T.
But when you see somebody try to recreate a hot rod these days, I mean, the old school this is kind of what the setup. This is the setup they're trying to recreate right there.
Yeah, well, the best looking hot rod setup for a roadster is always like the 28 or 29 Model A body with a 32 radiator shell, like this one's got here. That's a 32 shell, and the body's a Model A. But this is interesting. This is Santa Barbara. This is one of the very first 1948 drag meets that was legal. And by a club, the Santa Barbara Accelerators, as you can see from that guy's jacket, that's Tom Cobb, I think, one of the presidents of the club.
I even think there's a Deuce Coupe up in Santa Barbara right now. I mean, it's been, it's nice, but it's got the same kind of paint.
Oh, sure, yeah.
I mean, almost like somebody's trying to recreate that paint job a little bit.
Yeah.
I've seen it around town.
Well, that's popular. Frankly, if I was building a roadster hot rod, I'd build it in the old style with a flat head and steel wheels and everything just about like this, and nothing too fancy.
So no Kelsey Hayes rims on it or anything like that. They look cool, but it's...
Well, guys had Kelsey Hayes back in the day, but they were very expensive.
Yeah, that's my point, is a lot of those cars were just kind of thrown together. But I know that's, Richard, we always talk about Richard Keller. That's what he did. He messed around. He's a bomber pilot, right? Yeah. So here's this guy who gets into racing and just loves tinkering, and he's racing on the same runways that he was flying the bombers on.
Makes sense.
How cool is that?
That is cool.
You know?
Now, this is Santa Barbara drag strip. Looking from the end of it, obviously, there's a fellow with a checkered flag, and you can see the hangars. Like I see the airport, the Marines had just moved out less than a year before. The infrastructure for the airport was all still working. This telephone pole that this kid's standing next to had a working phone line that was actually connected to the starting line, so they could talk to each other. But the power was still on. The water was still working. The Marines just walked away and left everything.
This is like 48, 47?
This is 1947, I think.
47.
1947, someone got gapped. Look at that.
Yeah.
That guy gapped him.
Slightly.
Yeah, that's a great shot there.
Nice car.
Now, this is Lee Hammock, who's probably one of the most influential characters in Central Coast Motorsports. Raced virtually every type of racing that they had in those days: drag racing, stock cars, jalopy racing, midgets, Bonneville, road racing. He kind of did it all, and he was a member of the Santa Barbara Accelerators and was there in the first races, and became really big in the middle 1950s doing what they called jalopy racing here on the Central Coast. And there used to be just about every city and town had a quarter-mile or eighth-of-a-mile dirt track that they would have, kind of a cross between a stock car race and a demolition derby.
I want to see that.
That's where most of the cars went to die.
That's why there are no more 1934s. You see, that's a 34 that he's leaning on there. And that car, within a couple of days, the fenders were off it, and it was all ready to, he was converting it to a jalopy racer.
Was the jalopy where they did the figure eight in the dirt?
No, they raced
just an oval
track, yeah.
Oh, okay.
But there were no rules about.
So you could just mix it up. You could just get in there
that's
and
what
bump
they
some
wanted.
asses.
Yeah,
and,
that's what they wanted.
Well, certainly that's what the folks in the crowd wanted it. That's what they wanted to see.
Death and destruction.
It's like watching hockey players just go at it. Just let it free for all.
And the thing about Lee Hammock is that you can't have a discussion in Santa Barbara with anybody about hot rodding and his name doesn't come up. Yeah. I mean, he's a legend up there.
He really is a legend.
Yeah.
Wow.
And a real gentleman, a wonderful guy. Here's another shot looking down again, the strip at Santa Barbara, and you see how undeveloped it was in those days. Just where all those fields are, that's the 101 freeway now.
Wow.
In the background, yeah.
Amazing.
Wow. But those two buildings you see in the background, those are still there. The strip is still there. It's all overgrown. But is this
Goleta or Santa Barbara
this
proper?
Is Goleta.
This is Goleta.
Goleta,
okay.
yeah.
How awesome would it be to revive that, even for like a nostalgic one? I know it'll never happen, but how cool would that be?
Well, it should be landmark status at least.
Really
should be.
The airport was the first track. This wasn't the first track, or was it? Was this is the same track?
Well, this is an old taxiway.
Okay.
And see this railing in the foreground here. That's actually a livestock passage underneath.
Oh.
It goes underneath because there were cows in these fields. I guess there was a dairy up there once upon a time.
So probably had the grates to prevent the cattle from going on.
That's how they knew that they were at the end of the quarter miles. They would go over the grate.
That was the end of the race.
Now here we have jalopy racing at the Carpinteria Thunderbowl.
Wow.
Which the site is still there. If anybody's ever been to Carpinteria, it's at the east end of Carp Ave, and it's just a big vacant lot now. It used to be an actual natural bowl that a local entrepreneur bought, a car guy, and turned it into a great oval track, one of the best race venues on the coast. But the Department of Transportation offered him money to dump the earth from the construction of the 101 freeway into the bowl, and he said, "Well, I'm going to make more money doing that." So he did racetrack. So, but I heard that the legend is there's several of these cars buried there.
What?
Wow.
Dang.
Okay.
We need to do an archaeology
Dude, Indiana Jones. Let's go.
The site is still vacant. It's actually protected, I think.
Wow.
But it's the bluff at the very end of
CJ, come on. Find somebody in Santa Barbara.
Let's do it.
You know what I think we ought to do is we get Seth Hammond with some of his heavy equipment. We're going to show up and just start dragging.
Just get a metal detector. And
get out there.
I get the next investigative story for you, CJ.
There you go.
Yeah. I love the Ventura Avenue Bowl for Fun billboard back there. That's so cool.
Well, if you look in the book, I mean, the one I've got here in my lap, when you go through, and I like looking at the old billboards to see the different names and businesses, and there's another one right there. Sid's Cocktails.
But you see how they're racing there. This is typical action for a jalopy race, where the number 65, that's actually Lee.
Oh, okay.
In the 65 car, and he's about to let that guy in number 26 have it.
It's a great shot right before impact.
I see number 26 drifting. He's doing some nice drifting.
He's going to be drifting all
He's going to be drifting away, right?
And you see the heavy nerfing bars, everything.
Yeah.
Now, so we're going to head down south to Burbank, and a club called the Road Kings of Burbank. We spoke about them earlier. The most successful car club in racing. This is the founder, Jim Miles, and his 34 dragster. Now, an interesting story about this car is Jim raced it for a number of years until he went on to Altereds, and then sold it to another Burbank guy, and within a week it got stolen from the front of the guy's house. So the car disappeared for 30-something years, and no one ever knew what happened to it. Flash up to just about 10 years ago in a garage in Sun Valley, California, and the guy's got this old 34 body and frame in there, and he's going to make a hot rod out of it. So he's blasting the paint, many layers of paint on the body, and it's that car.
Oh,
wow.
Because this car was sponsored by Magic Mufflers, too, by that time.
And he saw that on the side, saw the Magic Mufflers, and that's what tipped it off, right?
And so now the car's been completely restored to the way it was when Jim was racing it.
So the guy that was blasting the paint off, did he just give the car back?
No, he owns the car, but he notified Jim Miles because it was kind of a famous car in the valley, and did some research and found out that Jim was still alive and reunited the two. And it's been completely restored to.
Wow, what a story!
The question is, where did he get that if it was stolen?
Well, and no title on these cars, and steel body changes hands after a few layers of paint. You don't know who belongs.
And I can tell you this: did it have that motor? Was that in the car? Is that? Look at that!
I was going to say, what motor is that?
That's a blown Chrysler. It's got I think that's a Collins.
It looks like a Hemi.
Supercharger. Yeah,
supercharged.
It is a Hemi.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that engine actually was in several cars.
That must have been one gnarly ride.
Well, you look how far back it goes past the firewall. It's like, damn, look at that.
Hemis are massive.
Wow. That thing, the driver must have been way the heck back, right?
Yeah, well, all of them, most of these, they sit in the back seat kind of area.
So this is before they stretched the front of a dragster out.
Yes.
Right? I mean, they didn't stretch out a dragster because of that.
Yeah, at this time dragsters were still basically a stock car with a steel body.
Exactly.
And, they can move the engine back and in because it's just a couple of frame rails and you can move the engine whichever way you want. But you notice also, this is one of the earliest use of motorcycle type wheels in the front.
Before
that they were using truck tires.
And I'm sure the rears were big fatties, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Early slicks. Again, this is all in the infancy when the aftermarket part industry was in its infancy too, and drag strips. I mean, drag slicks. The rear tires were still in development. A lot of these guys got free tires because the companies would give them to them to test out. What we're looking at here, this is another famous guy in the valley. He was actually the fastest guy in the San Fernando Valley in the mid-'50s, a fellow by the name of Tom Jant, who retired from racing early, but he was unbeatable. This is the character in American Graffiti was actually based on him.
Bob Falfa.
Yeah.
Harrison Ford's character.
Yeah. No,
No, not him?
the guy with the dark hair.
Oh, the other guy. I can't remember his character's
the
name.
Yellow Deuce.
Yeah.
And actually, there was a famous duel between Tom and another driver in a black Chevy, as in the movie, and that's what all that's based on.
Okay.
Wow.
Pretty
so
cool.
American Graffiti is a true story-ish.
Well, it's made of different antidotes.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Now, here we have one of the biggest things about the Road Kings is that two of the big drivers of the 1960s and beyond, Tommy Ivo and Don Prudhomme were members, and they're in this photograph. That's Ivo in the white T-shirt on the left, and Don the Snake Prudhomme on the right. That car is Ivo's first dragster that by this time Prudhomme was owning it, but they raced kind of as partners for a number of years, and they were good friends that fought all the time. It's about the only way.
I don't know if that's like Helm.
Yeah, like Gabe and I. Yeah.
So look how young they are. I mean, I like looking at these photos and says.
So now we've turned a page here, and we are on a custom body,
Right.
a longer dragster,
Right, if
as
you
we
look
know a dragster looks like now, right?
If you look at the first car in the number 440, that was one of the first dragsters built. This is the evolution.
Yeah, it's the next generation,
This
right?
is 1957 or 58, I would say, probably.
And this is the short body, because I remember when I was a kid, I'd go to Lions with my dad and so on and watch drag races, and I would see like short dragsters,
They
which
got
I'm assuming
longer over the years.
they got
They
ridiculously
lengthened out
long.
over
They
the
got
years. That
like
was-
30 feet long. I mean,
Yeah, they got heavier, and they found that the greater length made for a more stable run. And
that's side to side, right? When you get the giant slicks on the
Right.
back, and it's like doing this. Yeah.
By the time you got to the mid-70s, you get to the dragster that we all know. That long,
Right,
thin,
right.
small wheels, massive tires in the back.
Yeah.
Which hasn't changed much since then.
No.
yeah, I think one of the biggest changes was putting the engine in back, which was really overdue anyway. But most race cars, including road racing, Formula One, and everything by the early mid-'60s started going rear engine.
Rear engine, right.
But this is San Fernando drag strip.
Looks like a Volkswagen front end on that thing.
Well,
doesn't
that's
it?
actually a Fiat Topolino
Whoa.
body.
That's
which
a
was-
little tiny Fiat. Yeah.
Right. Well, now this is a AA fuel altered, which are the craziest, squirreliest cars in early drag racing. What it was, they took the smallest weight class. If you look at a dragster, they're all classed by weight and engine size. And originally also the type of car, whether it was a roadster or a coupe. But the formula with classification is length, weight, and engine size. So they would try to take the smallest class that had the largest allowable engine size.
That thing looks like a death trap. I mean, look how short the wheelbase
Insanely
is.
squirrely.
It's like an 8-foot wheelbase.
It's like the engine weighs more than the damn chassis.
Well,
Yeah.
and here's the thing. Look at the smoke inside the car.
Right,
I mean, how do
right.
you see anything? I mean, it's just a big, massive white smoke. I don't know how you can. And then trying to look past the supercharger.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, how would you? That's crazy.
No, you just steered in a straight line. You couldn't see in front of you. Now, this is one of the Magic Muffler cars. Actually, this is the famous Magic Muffler altered. And that's Jim Miles behind the wheel there. But there was lavender. And this car, I remember seeing this race all over California back in the day. In fact, there's a die cast. They even made a die cast.
Oh,
of this car.
sick.
Yeah.
Wow.
Is there a little irony that Magic Muffler's sponsoring cars that have nothing to do with mufflers ever?
Well,
Yeah.
technically, those pipes were mufflers.
Really?
I mean,
Would
yeah.
that,
Well, that's what it- I mean,
straight pipe would be
yeah.
considered
Originally,
a muffler?
that's what-
Okay.
I mean,
That's
I
how-
would. I would.
That's how the sponsorship first started. Was they supplied exhaust systems
Okay.
Oh, okay.
to this one guy here. They only sponsored Jim Miles, mostly. Now this is San Fernando drag strip again. You can see the timing tower off to the left, and this is a Road Kings Club Roadster from the very early 1950s.
Mm.
And again, very similar to the Motor Monarchs car. As you can see, it's a steel body over a couple of probably 1932 frame rails. And now you see 3 exhaust headers coming out. Can anybody tell me what kind of engine that is?
It's a 6-cylinder, isn't it?
A V6?
No.
They didn't make a V6
No.
back then, did they?
No,
I'm gonna keep guessing wrong. So
it's a Ford Flathead V8. The exhaust manifolds came out in 3.
Really?
what?
Yeah,
Really?
Well, I don't jack
yeah,
shit
that's a
about
Flathead
this.
V8. Yeah.
That's cool.
That's very unusual.
But
Well, and not only that, the flatheads were just so popular then because you could do so much with them, right?
oh, they were all over the place.
Yeah,
They
all
were
over,
cheap,
yeah.
and you could tune them, up to get pretty good horsepower and stuff. A lot of them made better times than the early overheads back in the day.
All right, now I'm going to be the non-car guy. Okay, why is the engine called a flathead?
Okay.
What's the
Because
layout?
the valves are on the side with an overhead engine. The valves are over the head.
Okay. Overhead. Got it. Okay.
And so with a flathead engine, the valve covers are flat.
So would we say CJ's 911? That's not a flathead engine. That's a flat six, right?
It's a flat
Boxer.
six.
Yeah, it's
A
the
boxer.
Way, it's the
Okay.
way the cylinders are
Yeah, because
flat.
they're going out
Yeah,
to
he's
the
talking-
sides,
the
right?
Flathead is the cylinder head.
Okay.
So that's the
So
difference.
flathead is still up and down on the pistons.
Well, the valves
right?
are on the side in the block.
Okay.
No,
the head comes
goes
down
this
on
way.
top
Oh,
of it.
really?
That's on the Porsche, yeah. The box.
No, on the flathead, the one we were talking about.
yeah.
So
That-
those are still traditional.
Yeah, flathead
It's just
refers to the cylinder head.
It's literally
Yes.
flat.
Yeah.
Like the cylinder head is
Correct.
flat. Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. I appreciate that.
I'm sure someone, when we post this online, people will comment and tell us that we don't know what they're talking
We
about.
don't know what the heck we're talking about.
But Tony does.
But we
Tony
admit
does.
it. Tony knows.
does.
We don't.
We don't know
So,
jack
yeah.
shit.
So anything Tony says is right. Anything we say is wrong.
right.
Yeah.
Whatever we
Yeah.
say is mostly bullshit.
Hell,
so,
Hell
yeah.
might have answered that question.
I wish my ex-wife had had that attitude.
All right, what are we seeing here?
This is one of this is San Fernando drag strip. In the later days, it closed, I think, around 1970. But this is looking down the strip, and like most of the racetracks and the drag strips in California, closed not because there was any lack of popularity, but encroaching development.
yeah, housing developments,
Housing,
right?
particularly with
Yeah.
San Fernando, it was always a problem. It got worse as more and more houses surrounded.
Yeah.
But
Can you describe where? Because I see that sort of overpass thing down there. It almost looks like an aqueduct. Where in the valley is this?
that is the aqueduct. That's in the northwest valley
Okay.
along Glen Oaks.
Okay. Yeah. Sure.
Okay, I forget the cross street, but the that aqueduct's still there. Like I say, there's a home center. There's something on a good part of the track, but quite a great deal of the track in the pit area is still there. It's a weekend swap meet now.
Oh, interesting.
It's
Oh,
funny
I've been
because
there. We've been
back
there.
in the days when I was a very young man, I would go street racing. We would race at Glen Oaks. Helm actually lived down the street from there. So it was peculiar. Maybe they chose that area location because they were already racing there back in the
exactly.
day,
History.
and the generations
Yeah,
just kind of took
exactly.
on. So it's interesting.
Well, this was originally, I think it was an emergency landing field for Van Nuys Airport or something like that.
That makes sense.
That was what this strip was, and again, it was unoccupied at the time, and the local highway patrol men and a local businessman who was a member of the Chamber of Commerce, I think it was, thought it would be a good place to for the kids to race, and they financed it, basically paid the insurance and had the timing tower and stands put up, and this was run originally by a Van Nuys club called the Road Rumblers. But then as the Road Kings became more popular, kind of the Road Rumblers joined the Road Kings, and the San Fernando drag strip was the Road Kings track.
Oh,
As I
nice.
said before, every track had a car club that sponsored it,
So, I see.
at least back in the early days.
Do we know anything about that car?
Well, it's I would say it's about a 1950, mid-50s dragster from the type of wheels it's got.
Mm-hmm.
And the motor's in the front, way up in front.
It's what they call a slingshot. The
Yeah.
driver's sitting after the differential.
Mm.
So I think actually this photo probably is more from the mid-late 50s,
Mm.
judging from the car.
Well, I mean, the thing I love about this photo, and again, if you're listening to this on a podcast, you should go check out the YouTube channel. because
Sure.
These photos are awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the thing I like about this photo is this is just like epic California.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
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 And you look at it and go, man,
Epic
that's
Southern
California.
California,
Yeah,
for
Southern
sure.
California.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, I love it.
And you got whatever Tri-5 or Buick or whatever that is on the left there. It's parked on the side watching,
Yeah.
or maybe he's next up to run. Who knows?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
This looks like a qualifying run that this guy's on here, where they had to make sure that the car could hit a certain speed and
Back-
everything before they would let it race. So
Back then, would they be doing their timing with stopwatches, like a guy down at the end with a
well,
stopwatch, or
no?
how did they do that?
By the early 50s, they had timing equipment. They actually had some of it was optically operated, but
Okay.
for a couple of $100 you could buy a timing outfit that had the clocks and everything. At Santa Barbara, and those cases, they had a guy at either end of the strip, right? And a guy actually timed it with a stopwatch. But pretty quickly, they came up with timing equipment, and there was already stuff on the market.
You'd think post-war with that technology boom, the bomb sites and all that stuff, you'd think that stuff would have really started evolving post-war.
Well, also that stuff was actually available even in the 1930s.
Oh, really?
They were doing speed tests and acceleration runs.
American ingenuity.
So,
yeah. Richard Keller would appreciate it.
Yeah. I'm sure he knew all about it.
He could probably give us a lecture about it. Right?
Yeah, but I forget one of the big companies. It wasn't Timex, but it was Longines, or I think one of the big watch manufacturers actually made timing equipment that you could buy.
Yeah. Well, and we've talked about, that's one of the topics we want to talk about here, the connection between racing and automobiles and
watches.
Mechanical.
It's part of the history.
Exactly.
Well, I remember watching the Olympics and ABC Wide World of Sports like early in the 60s. And sponsored by Longines. You see the signs all over the ski slope and so
Rolex.
on.
Rolex,
Longines, yeah.
Which is funny because Rolex keep terrible time.
I've heard that. They're just a status symbol, right?
I guess.
Yeah.
Helm has a Rolex.
I'm a Timex man myself.
Timex, man.
So
Yeah.
I'm a Seiko guy myself right now.
Hey, I'm a Seiko dude too. So I like all watches.
So is that all the photos?
That's all the photos.
Wow. Then we went through those fast. That was 20-some photos.
Well, I got thousands of them if you guys want more.
Let's do 10 more shows.
You got to go get his book. That's what you have to do.
Exactly.
To see any of these photos. They're really worth it. These books are awesome.
That's right.
Now, when you document all this stuff and people see your books and they come out, and do you ever have anybody challenge what you say? Because everybody has car stories that might conflict, or like I said, who's the fastest in the valley, or who's the fastest in California. Do you ever get guys challenging what you're writing, saying that, oh, that's not true? Or
Well, I think in every book that I've written, I put a disclaimer in the acknowledgments that says, first of all, I apologize for the inevitable errors that are going to crop up here. But one of my books, the road racing book, I had a guy call me, and he emailed me like a 30-item error sheet.
Think he was an engineer?
that's funny.
That's funny.
Yeah. But no, I haven't really had anybody, because I strive for accuracy.
Yeah.
I honestly do. I think that's every historian and writer's nightmare, is coming up with something that's inaccurate or not true, and then having it published.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And they come out with a revised version with the guy's list of changes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we get people that comment. We have guests on that share stories or share opinions, and with the Instagram and Facebook and stuff like that, people can comment very easily, instantly, and say that, oh, you guys are wrong or whatever, which is fine. We can be wrong. We don't claim to be right. As a matter of fact, we assume that everything that we say, just assume it's wrong, but all we're doing is sharing this story.
Sure.
Whether it's right or wrong, it's your story. It's Tony Baker's story. It's so-and-so's story. That's the most important thing, is getting it, capturing it, and you can do whatever you want with that.
We just don't want to hear that we're wrong.
Exactly.
Nobody likes that.
No.
Even though we are.
But I think the most beautiful thing too, I think we're on the same page, is that this is why this show exists, is that we're here to preserve those stories, just like how you mentioned. You're trying to really preserve the stories and share and interview these people that are soon to be gone, and that's why when I met Tina and she mentioned you, I just thought it was the perfect fit to get you on the show,
And that's why you're our hero.
Exactly. And let me tell you something too. After reading your recent book, I was just blown away. I'm an 818. I was born in the 818.
818 area code for those that don't know what
exactly.
I'm talking about.
St. Joseph's in Burbank. I was born there, and I love the valley, the San Fernando Valley. So reading the stories, and I love cars as well. So kind of reading about the history of the hot rodding scene in the San Fernando Valley, it inspired me to kind of take note of these gems that were mentioned in there, especially the Old River Road. You know, my
Forest Lawn Drive, yeah.
grandma and grandpa are buried at Forest Lawn. So guess what I did the last time I went to go visit them was go from Barham all the way down to where Griffith was, to kind of envision where that road would be parallel to the LA River. And you know,
it's changed a lot.
Oh no, yeah, for sure, but
not like it was.
But just to know and envision, like at 12 midnight, they would be down there racing, you know, and you know, and those are those things that really I enjoyed.
There's a story Tom Jant used to tell, because he was the they called him the king of the River Road. Yeah. And what he would do is he would go down there early on a night, like, you know, 7 or 8 o'clock, and everybody, because he was the fastest, everybody wanted to race him. So there'd be like maybe a dozen guys lined up to race him. And so he would race them all for about an hour. And then the whole crowd of people was there racing. And then he would leave and go to the Bob's Big Boy by the time the cops showed up.
Smart guy.
Yeah.
Boy, not a lot has changed, because this is stuff that we did when we were street racing back in the 90s. Oh, you know, go to these races, and there would be a guy who, like, he's fast. And people would try to race him or whatever. But I was always freaked out about getting, you know, barricaded in by the cops and, you know, getting your car impounded or whatever. So I would always, you know, I've been here too long. I got to go.
Yeah.
You know, so it's just interesting to hear nothing's changed. You know,
exactly.
It's still the same kind of mentality, because you talk about cruising down Barham or whatever at midnight. I remember many times, you know, not going to college, you know, or, you know, and driving around the valley late at night, going to those different street race spots. Oh, yeah. Kind of, you know, lurking around. You know.
I mean, even sharing a story with my brother-in-law. My brother-in-law's been a teacher for John Burroughs for over 30 years. And they talk about some of the road kings going to John Burroughs High and using their auto shop to fix their
there's
hot
a picture
rods.
In the book of doing that, yeah.
So,
well, the automotive shop, that was every high school had a very active automotive shop. Mine did. Hollywood High, we had this old Indianapolis mechanic in there that ran the shop. That was a real trip. But everybody, and that was the shop class everyone wanted to take in high school, was auto shop.
Yeah.
You know,
that's cool.
I don't think they do that anymore. Van Nuys High School actually had its own quarter-mile drag strip.
What?
Wait, what?
Yeah.
That's insane.
Alongside of the shop building.
What?
Wow.
I would have.
It was there for years.
I would have asked my parents to transfer me to that school.
I think part of it's still there.
Land was cheap.
Dude, I want to see that.
Land was cheap in the valley.
I want to see that.
Crazy.
I knew there was a famous, during my high school era, a famous. I went to a different school in Sun Valley, but in North Hills at Monroe, James Monroe, there was a famous auto body shop mechanic and teacher named Doc. I mean, that was his nickname. But
they all had names like that.
Yeah, and he was a famous guy at Monroe. But yeah, I mean, that's long, gone too as well.
Was his last name Shadow?
maybe.
Doc Shadow.
Doc Shadow.
No one knows who the Shadow is.
Boy, that's going back. Doc Shadow.
Yeah. I had a quick question regarding the Martinez brothers. Are they still alive?
No, Richard just passed a couple of years ago, and Eddie's been dead for a long time. But they were, like I said, they were the greatest mechanics that engine builders, incredible engine builders, and car builders. Richard went on to become an architect, actually, and designed several buildings here in Ventura. The hotel down there by the marina, I think it's the 4 Points or Four Seasons.
I think it's the 4 Points.
The 4 Points.
The Sheridan.
Down there. Yeah, that was his. But they just went on, and like most of the guys, if they didn't go into professional racing like a few of the Road Kings guys did, after you're about 25 or so, you get married, you have kids, and you put up the driving helmet.
You get a real job, and
and the car goes it's sold off and disappeared, and that's what happens to 90% of the guys that we see in these books, and the cars just seem to disappear.
And there's still some guys. I mean, we talk about Santa Barbara; those guys still get out there. Seth Hammond still gets out there.
Well, they do.
And they race and.
There was a guy here who just passed away, Bud Hammer, who was big in drag racing, and he raced, I think they call it heritage drags, where it's older guys like him with bigger, older cars, but they would tour John Farr, he's another one. His shop's just a few blocks around.
John Farr, yeah, I know where his shop is.
Famous builder.
Yeah.
And he's in his, I don't know, late 80s now or something. But they were touring his car up until just recently. But again, most of those guys have passed away just in the last 5 years.
Yeah.
You know, it's a sad thing. It's important to get these stories recorded.
Absolutely.
And out there.
And we're working on something now. In just the last week or so, you agreed to be on a panel that we're putting together. It's going to be sponsored by West of Tulsa, but we're going to talk about, we're going to have some of the old hot rodders on there. Hoping Lee Hammock can be there.
I hope
Seth Hammond. We hope Lee's can be there. But that's what it's there for. We want to hear them tell the stories directly and get them on tape talking about those days. What I'm excited about that project, and it's being put together by Dana Newquist, who we've had on the show. He's the one doing Platypus.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So one of the things I'm looking forward to that panel, if you will, we're hoping it's probably going to tape in June, I think is what it is. But I'm excited to get these guys together and almost pretend I'm sitting at a table drinking beer, listening to these guys tell stories from.
We don't have to pretend.
Ages.
We just got to get the beer.
Let's get beer.
You know,
Yeah,
or
we
whiskey.
do it in front of an audience. That's what it's going to be.
No, you get these guys started talking, and it's really great. Do you know Jack Chard?
No.
He's a big one. He was in the Igniters.
Igniters.
Good
So
name.
there were the two big clubs of Santa Barbara were the Dusters and the Igniters.
Wow.
The Dusters and the Igniters.
And Frank Vieira's another one. I think Lee was in the Igniters. That's the earlier club. And they were the racing club, and the Dusters was more the partying club.
The partying club.
Yeah, and they all had the drive-in up in Santa Barbara was the Blue Onion. You ever heard of that?
No.
The Blue Onion.
Yeah.
I love it.
That's an original name.
Yeah, it was a drive-in. It was on, the Shoreline Road there that, fronts the beaches there in Santa
Wow. That's cool that these things kind of, like somewhere where you go all the time, have no clue that there might have been a racetrack here or a famous garage shop or, how many people know that, the first drag strip was in Santa Barbara. I would assume
And
it
you
was
could still see
Pomona.
it. Yeah, you could
because
still
that's
see
where
it.
the NH racetrack is. But
Right.
sure enough, it's in Santa Barbara. It's
Well,
really cool.
Santa Ana used to claim the honor for years because of Wally Parks and the NHRA, and he says, well, we're the first, but it's been documented that the first actual drag strip was in Santa Barbara.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's cool. And I think that's the biggest thing that when I moved to Ventura, I found out when I became friends with the local guys here, guys who knew like John Farr and Frank Sines and Steve Feist, who, kind of like brought me in and showed me the ropes, and realizing how rich the hot rodding history is in Ventura County. And
Oh, incredibly
it's
rich.
it's so slept on. People that are outside of this area have no clue unless they're like from in Pomona or in the scene, like the Road King guys or whatever. But it's just amazing how rich the history is here just in Ventura. And that's why I'm glad we're doing the show here in Ventura, because a lot of this stuff is literally down the street from there.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like right in the middle of everything.
Yeah, we're like in the epicenter.
LA, Santa Barbara. It's like Ventura's right here in the middle.
Well, Ventura's got a great little dirt track that runs. It's a great show, and it's cheap. I think it's $15 to get in and see several hours of racing on a Saturday night.
Mm-hmm.
It's still, racing's still, it's not as popular as it used to be. It doesn't get the crowds that it used to, but it's still very entertaining. And
Oh, yeah.
when you're down there and you're smelling the gasoline and the dust coming up and the roar of the cars and
Yeah.
going around and they're colliding with each other, and
Yeah.
You feel the rumble in your
it's
chest.
still awesome.
it is.
I love dirt racing. I understand Santa Maria, which was one of the oldest and one of the last dirt tracks, is closing, or it has just closed. Which
Oh.
is a
Well,
shame.
and actually, they just reopened it. They said they're going to
Oh,
reopen
thank
it for
God.
this summer.
Yeah,
So,
good.
it's back.
And,
I think it's been shut down for 3-4 years.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it's back.
Wow.
Yeah, that's
they're gonna
good.
they're going to have races again.
We should
this
go
summer.
down there and cover.
That's a
one
landmark.
of those
You really
races.
should.
That
You
would be
really
fun.
should. Yeah.
That would be fun. Maybe we can get some awareness, because there's probably a lot of people that don't even know that there's a track there.
Yeah, I didn't even know.
And if you don't know and you're passing on the 101,
You can't
heading north,
miss it.
You look left and there it is right after
Yeah.
you go over the river. It's right there.
But
to
I
the left.
guarantee you, though, if you don't see cars driving on that track, like you go in the midday and the track's closed or whatever, most people probably wouldn't know what that is.
No.
Because it's like, what's this big dirt bowl sitting here on the side of the 101 freeway? You know,
What's that word raceway mean? What is that?
No, I'm serious. I mean, people.
Because I think it still has a raceway sign on it.
Yeah.
It still says raceway on it.
Yeah, I mean, the Saugus was like that. It was like this random racetrack. It wasn't very big. But you're like, what the heck? There's a racetrack here in Saugus.
What's it
what?
doing?
Now it's a swap meet.
Now it's a swap meet. Which is unfortunate.
Yeah.
But whatever.
Saugus was also the site of a very early drag strip too, Lou Bainey's Saugus drag strip, which was, again, it was just a single strip of asphalt. It was an emergency landing strip, and there were no buildings. There was no timing tower, no concession stand. There was a picnic table under an oak tree. That's it. It had a cooler with beer in it, and no timing facilities, nothing like that. But it was, I think, Bainey founded that in 1952. And then shortly after that, Santa Ana, and then Santa Maria. What else? Which one came after that? Well, anyway, kind of like pimples coming up. They started at one place and they kind of started popping up all over the place.
Sure.
Wow.
Nice.
Well,
great history.
Any other questions for Tony? I mean, it's just amazing.
I mean, I know we
history.
could go on and on.
I know we
'cause there's
could.
so
We
many
really could.
stories.
And not just drag racing and dirt track. I mean, there was stock car racing here, and road racing, which we covered a little bit.
Motorcycles, you said you wrote a book on motorcycle racing.
Big motorcycle country, particularly Santa Barbara.
Yeah.
Was huge on that. Some of the first motorcycle hill climbs were where La Conchita is. What they call the Dunchie Grade. You can't see the road anymore because the slide took it out, but there used to be a diagonal road that went up the bluff right behind the town there, and that they were having, I think the first motorcycle meet was 1918.
Wow.
Yeah.
I had no clue about that one.
I know.
Buried under dirt now.
There's a picture of it in the book.
Well, definitely, people, if you're listening or watching, we definitely recommend you buy all of the books. But, the latest one's the San Fernando Valley one, right?
Right.
So
you can go to arcadiapublishing.com and just search my name, and all 7 books will come up.
Is it on Amazon too?
It's on Amazon. You can find them at Barnes and Nobles, hardware stores, car washes.
And if you're in the San Fernando Valley, you could cruise on down to Auto Aero Books.
Yeah,
on
Auto
Magnolia.
Books, Aero Books. Highly recommend that just to go down to the place.
Yeah.
Because it's a trip.
It's the last of its
Yeah.
kind.
Which the rest of you guys need to come down to Burbank and visit the bookstore.
They
It's
got
amazing.
Haynes books. They got Chilton books. They got the Arcadia books. They got anything and everything related to cars. Hop Up Magazine, you can find that there.
Yeah, they got
Everything
awesome
that's cool.
stuff.
most car magazines I've ever seen.
Yeah,
there.
it's amazing stuff.
Stuff that I didn't even know existed. It was pretty cool. So it's a trip. If you're in the area, you should definitely go check out Auto Books, Air Books.
Yeah. The other thing you were saying that you've done a couple book signings down there, and Jay Leno's shown up.
Yeah, he's shown
Bought your
up.
book, and
Yeah, he's a great guy. Big booster of cars, obviously. He'll drop in, buy a book, get his picture taken with it, and off he goes.
to read your
He's
book.
the guy. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'll be at the Road Kings show in Burbank at Johnny Carson Park on June 9th. That's going to be a show with something like 400 cars.
It's a huge show.
And then in Ventura, over the Labor Day weekend, I will be at the Ventura Nationals in the Hop Up magazine building. I'll have a couple of historic hot rods
Sweet.
Oh, right.
along with me too. So,
And then
anybody
we'll
wants to come and say hi, come up.
we'll definitely have you on the show again because we're going to do the big show with Dana in June.
Yeah.
So we'll definitely sit down with you again and
And again, that one's going to be interesting because we're going to have Tony there, but a lot of the old hot rodders. We're hoping are going to join us.
Oh, yeah.
But we have a nice list. I don't know who.
and maybe a
who's committed.
surprise guest or
Maybe.
a big one.
And in addition to that, maybe a third time with Tony and Bob Moravez, who I met at the show.
Oh, Bob would love to do this. I'm
Yeah,
sure.
and his son
Paul
Michael. So
Lippincott.
it was great meeting them at the book signing as well.
Yeah, I would love to get the Mervez father and son on here. That would be great.
That's Floyd Lippincott Jr.
Floyd Lippin, and then Junior. You
And then
can't
I think
forget the
after that
Junior
show,
part.
I want a nickname too after that show.
I got a
you know?
nickname for you.
Uh-oh.
I'll have to say it. I'll have to say it off camera though.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, boy, you opened the door to that one.
Oh man, Tony Baker, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, CJ.
Yeah, it's been great. Great stories. I mean, I thought it was good reading the book, but it's even better hearing you give all the details.
Talking about it, yeah.
And look, Beth bought you that for a birthday
This is a
gift.
birthday
right?
gift
And guess
years
what?
ago.
And look, Tony signed it today.
Yeah, there you go. Look at it. He signed
All
it.
right.
I don't know if you can see it on there, but I got Tony's
Awesome.
singing up.
Well, I appreciate it, guys. Thanks for having me.
No, it's been fun. And we'll come back and we'll keep
got
talking about more of the books you write.
Thousands of pictures of any kind of racing field that you want to see. A good subject would be Santa Barbara Airport road races,
Yeah.
which were hugely popular. Also Paramount Ranch, which they used to hold road races there. In fact, part of the old course is still there, but that's got some great stories. And if you saw the movie Ford versus Ferrari,
Oh yeah.
a lot of the principals in that movie raced at Paramount Ranch.
Wow.
Oh wow.
Yeah, Jim Miles, not Jim Miles, well, the English guy in the movie.
Ken Miles.
Kenny Miles, yeah.
Ken Miles. Yeah.
Yeah, he designed the course at Paramount Ranch.
Wow.
So I've got dozens of pictures of him racing there.
That's cool.
Yeah.
All right. So you're going to come back tomorrow then? Is that what
Maybe next week.
And maybe next week. We'll give you a break. We'll give you a break. But hopefully we'll see you in June though at the Big Hot Rod Forum. I'm excited about that. Yeah. All right. Is that it? All right.
Yeah.
Tip line,
Off
tip
the
line.
air.
Tip line. Yeah.
Tip line,
yeah,
tip
that's
line.
right. We'll do it twice. We'll do it at the beginning. We're going to do it at the end. Don't forget, we got our tip line. Go to our website, westoftulsa.com. Click on the tip line link. Fill it out. Tell us what kind of story. I mean, if you got a great story idea, like these guys are stupid. Why are they not doing a story on this?
Yeah.
Fill it out. Send it back. We'd love to talk about it. And we'd love to have you in studio. All right. Well, don't forget it. Like, follow, subscribe. We have our YouTube.
Channel.
Man, he's nailing it every
He's
time.
getting that one word.
He's
He
nailing
says it in such a special way.
Just
you know?
trying to get over with.
He's just like YouTube channel.
Are you in broadcasting?
Yeah. Now we have All right. Thanks for watching or listening if you're on a podcast. But I would suggest if you want to see these old photos,
Watch
go
this
to YouTube
one.
Gotta see the
channel. You
photos.
got to
Just
see
watch
the old
this
photos.
one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's worth it. It's worth it. All right. Thanks for watching, and we will see you west of Tulsa.